Raisa and Fero arrived in Paris, the city of love, for a holiday they had long dreamed of. That evening, they stood at the top of the Eiffel Tower, gazing at the sprawling city lights below. The crisp air of the night brushed gently against their skin, and the twinkling lights of Paris below them resembled a sea of stars, casting an enchanting aura over the scene. Raisa stood close to the safety railing, her eyes fixed on the view, yet her expression was distant, vacant even. Fero, standing beside her, watched with a faint smile on his face, content in the presence of the woman he loved. But tonight, her smile seemed different. There was a weight behind it, something unspoken. "What's on your mind?" Fero asked softly, his voice tinged with concern. Raisa turned to him, her gaze locking with his, and for a moment, it felt as though the whole world had paused. This was the moment she had been preparing for. "Fero, I feel like our relationship is starting to stagnate. I need something different. I want to try an open relationship." Fero stood frozen, the words sinking into him like stones in still water. "What do you mean?" His voice cracked with shock. Raisa took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I think we need the freedom to explore ourselves, without being so tied to one another. I still want us to be together, but in a freer way." Fero struggled to process her words, his heart heavy with confusion. Unsure of what to say, he merely nodded slowly, the emptiness in his chest growing more profound with each passing second. The Eiffel Tower, once a symbol of romance, now felt eerily cold, with Fero's heart echoing a deep sense of loss. That evening, they returned to their hotel in Paris. Despite the many unspoken words still hanging between them, the atmosphere in their room felt cold, almost suffocating. Raisa sat on the edge of the bed, her hands nervously folded in her lap, while Fero stood near the window, his gaze lost in the distant cityscape. "Why do you want this?" Fero finally asked, his voice heavy with uncertainty. "Are you sure this is the best thing for us?" Raisa shrugged, feeling more lost than she cared to admit. "I just feel like we need more freedom, Fero. I know it's difficult, but I believe it will make our relationship stronger." Fero turned to face her, his eyes filled with doubt. "We've been together for so long, and now suddenly you want something new? Do you feel like I'm not enough for you?" Raisa lowered her head, guilt washing over her. "It's not like that, Fero. You've always been enough. But I want to explore other things too, without sacrificing what we have." Fero stood silent for a long while, his thoughts in turmoil. This was something he never expected, something that felt like he was losing control of a love he had always trusted. The following day, after their heavy conversation, Raisa went to a small cafe near their hotel to clear her mind. She sat by the window, staring out at the bustling streets of Paris, when her eyes met those of a man sitting alone at a nearby table. There was something about him, an undeniable pull that caught her attention immediately. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice warm and inviting. "Is it all right if I sit here?" Raisa hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He introduced himself as Leo. They began to chat about life, adventure, and the concept of freedom. There was something different about Leo, something that made Raisa feel alive in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt at ease talking to him, something she hadn't experienced with anyone else. Leo was spontaneous, carefree, and there was an undeniable chemistry between them. As the hours passed, Raisa realized how easy it was to connect with him, despite just meeting. A feeling of confusion began to take root within her, but so did the guilt for Fero, guilt for allowing herself to feel this way. Later that evening, Raisa found herself back at the Eiffel Tower. She stood alone on the open balcony, the cold night air brushing against her skin. This time, she wasn't with Fero. Instead, she had come to seek solitude, to figure out the growing mess of emotions within her. Below, the city still glittered, but it felt farther away than ever. Her thoughts were consumed by Leo, a feeling she couldn't shake off. Yet, even as those thoughts lingered, she knew there was something even stronger beneath them, a profound sense of guilt over Fero. "Why do I feel like this?" she thought to herself. "Why do I feel so confused about what I want?" Just then, Fero appeared behind her. He stood silently for a moment before speaking, his voice thick with emotion. "We need to talk, Raisa," he said, his tone strained. Raisa turned around, their gazes meeting once more. The silence between them was charged, thick with unspoken words. Standing atop the Eiffel Tower, once a place of romance, now felt like the weight of their entire relationship was suspended in the air, hanging by a fragile thread. Fero and Raisa sat on a bench on the Eiffel Tower's observation deck. Fero's eyes bore into Raisa's face, filled with disappointment, while Raisa kept her gaze lowered, unable to meet his eyes. "So this is what you want?" Fero's voice was low, filled with sorrow. "This is how we're supposed to save our relationship?" Raisa felt the weight of the world pressing down on her. "I just want freedom, Fero. I want to feel alive without being tied down," she replied, her voice hollow. Fero let out a long sigh. "But is that freedom worth losing us? Are you ready to lose me just for the sake of freedom?" Raisa fell silent. This was a monumental decision, and there was no turning back. Her heart was torn between the freedom she longed for and the love she had for Fero. After their heart-wrenching conversation, Raisa found herself spending more time with Leo. They wandered the streets of Paris, under the vast night sky filled with stars. Yet, despite the joy she felt with Leo, the guilt over Fero gnawed at her constantly. Raisa began to realize that the freedom she sought was bringing with it a heavy burden. Every smile Leo gave, every word he spoke, felt incomplete without Fero. Her confusion only deepened, and she found herself spiraling further. Raisa sat alone in a park in Paris, gazing at the flowers that surrounded her. She felt like she was trapped between two worlds. On one hand there was Leo, who made her feel free and alive. On the other there was Fero, always loyal and full of care. Her heart was torn, and the guilt weighed heavily on her. That same night, Raisa returned to the Eiffel Tower. Fero was waiting for her below, his posture calm but his eyes betraying his hurt. Raisa knew that the time had come to make a decision, one that would change everything. When they finally met, Fero looked into her eyes and asked, "Can we still fix this, Raisa? Is there any hope for us?" Raisa met his gaze, and in her heart, she realized that the freedom she had sought might not be what was best for her. But could she return to Fero and mend everything? Raisa stood before Fero, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Fero. I don't know how I got here," she whispered, her voice heavy with regret. Fero looked at her, still struggling to forgive, but there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I want to trust you, Raisa. I want us to try again." Atop the Eiffel Tower, Raisa and Fero made a decision that would change their lives. They didn't know whether their relationship would return to what it was before, but they knew they would try to fix it, despite the uncertainty. In the quiet of that night, Raisa and Fero held hands, standing amidst the ever-turning chaos of Paris. Now they would no longer rely solely on their love for each other, but on their understanding and willingness to change.